Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online character build with me, Sherman. Today guys, I bring you the Vengeance Paladin. But of course, before we get started, disclaimer, this is a roleplay, casual play build. It is not meant for meta play. Now, getting into the idea of the Vengeance Paladin is it can be any class. It does not have to be specifically a Dragonknight. The reason I chose Dragonknight for the initial idea of it was because it fits so perfect for the concept behind it and how it works. So it just worked really well with the Dragonknight. Probably one of the better options for this setup. But any class can play it. In fact, Nightblades play it really good, but you have to change out the monster set to a different set. When you play a Templar, you got to change out the monster set, and pretty much everything's just got to change monster sets depending on what class you play. So now let's go ahead and get into what the Vengeance Paladin is. The Vengeance Paladin is a divine kind of person that uses the vengeance of divine powers, if you will, to bring order to chaos. And they use their ability to aid and protect their allies and everything else. They're very like I said, they're very based on magical capabilities more than they are stamina, but they can use a mix of both, and they work out really well. Their primary role is tank, then healer, then damage dealer. So primary role tank, other roles healer and damage dealer. So let's go ahead and take a look at this build. So starting at this screen, we have the Vengeance Paladin. We are a Dragonknight. We are Imperial with this one. Any race can play this as well. Every one of these builds that I've made is made to work with every race. So, with the Imperial though, you will want to put 14 into stamina, 40 into health, 10 into magicka, so you can play this as a more effective tank. Now, if you didn't want to do that setup, you could put everything into health. You do have less stamina and magicka, but that's fine. That's up to you on how you want to play it. Now, if you want to play this character as a damage dealer, you're going to want to put more into stamina and magicka combined. You're going to want about a 25k magicka and about a 28k stamina in order to play this character real viably as a damage dealer. Now, if you want to play this character as a healer, you would take all your attribute points and put it into magicka. This way you could play a more effective magicka healer character. Now, going over the stats for the Imperial, we do have 21k magicka, 35k health, 24k max stamina. We do have a 951 mag recovery with a 413 health recovery, 57 stam recovery. Now, because of the way this character plays, you want a really good magic recovery in order to sustain your magic use. Now, depending on how you play, whether you're playing a magic damage dealer or a stamina damage dealer will determine how, or if you're playing a damage dealer or healer, will determine how much recovery you're going to need. Now, moving on to the weapon damage, we do have a 2108 weapon damage with a 28% weapon critical for when we're tanking. We have a 1709 spell damage with a 19% spell critical for when we're tanking. We also have a 25k spell resist with a 25k physical resist. Now, I am going to show you this buffed up along with their weapon and spell damage. So we're going to go over here, we're going to do this and this. So this is what they look like buffed up. If you guys didn't see that, let me do that again. And I'll do this again so I can just keep that. There you go, 2496, 2197, and we have a 27k physical spell right there. And then on the front bar, we actually have 3131. And so we're really, really defensive. Moving on, we are using the Lady Mundustone with this class because we want that higher spell and physical resist for when we're tanking. Now, if you are playing the Nightblade version of this, I would suggest changing the monster set to Lord Warden. If you're playing the Templar, change to Scyllatrix. If you're playing the, if you're playing the Nightblade, switch to, not Mephalas, it's another one. Hold on. Guys, I apologize for this. So you're going to want to switch to Melibeth, the Scourger, on Shadow, on the Nightblade. On the Warden, you're going to switch to the Celene's, Templar, like I said, the Silitrix, and then Stormfist for the Sorcerer. The reason why Vengeance Paladins use a lot of ability to bring damage to their enemies and chaos, not really aid. They bring a lot of more, like I said, they're vengeful. So, and then moving on down through here, we do have Tri-Stat food that we use. This is primarily for max health, max stamina, and max magicka, so we can play all three roles effectively. That means tank, damage dealer, healer. Now, moving on to the equipment, starting with our potions that we primarily use. The potions we primarily use are tripods, and this is for when we're tanking. This gives you health, magic, and stamina back. It also grants you major fortitude, major intellect, and major endurance, increasing health, magic, and stamina recovery by 20% for 47.3 seconds. This potion scales off your max resource, or your max level. But the ones in the game, you're going to want to get the CP 160 pots. Now, the ones you're going to use for when you're playing a healer type is called the Spellcasters Elixirs, or the Magicka Power Pots, or Magicka, I think they're called Magicka Elixir. But it's basically a spell power pot. It gives you magicka back, and it gives you 20% magic recovery, along with major sorcery and major prophecy, increasing spell damage and spell critical chance. When you're playing as a more of a damage dealer all around, you do use the Warrior Elixir or the Stamina Elixir, and this gives you stamina back. It gives you major endurance, increasing stamina recovery by 20%, major brutality, major savagery, increasing both weapon and weapon damage and weapon critical. Sorry, but you're going to use that when you're playing damage dealer. And then, of course, like I said, the Tri-Stat food is really good for this. Now, the first set that this build uses for the Dragonknight is the Grothdar set. Now, Grothdar is a very powerful set, because one, it adds to your magicka pool with the one piece. The two piece, when you deal damage, you have a 10% chance to create lava pools that swirl around you, dealing X amount of damage to all enemies within 8 meters of you every second for 5 seconds. This effect can occur once every 10 seconds. So as you can see, the Vengeance Paladin is more of an offensive tank than they are a defensive tank. They use some defensive sets and stuff to offer group aid and offer group assistance, but they're primarily designed to be really aggressive tanks. The next one set is Hunting's Rage. You guys should have guessed this. 2-piece weapon critical, 3-piece max stamina, 4-piece weapon critical, and then the 5-piece increase your weapon damage by 299. Most paladin builds I release will use Hunting's Rage, so just letting you know now. The next set we're running is called the Brands of the Imperium set. Now this set gives you max health on the 2-piece, the 3-piece, max health, the 4-piece, healing taken, and then the 5-piece. When you take damage, you have a 10% chance to grant you and your allies within 8 meters a damage shield that absorbs X amount of damage for 6 seconds. This effect can occur once every 15 seconds. This applies to not just one target, this applies to multiple targets. So it's kind of like spell power, it's almost like combat physician, but instead of overhealing or healing people to 100% health or whatever, and giving them a shield, you give them a shield whenever you take damage. Alright, so now we're going to go over the traits and the enchants on the gear, starting with the monster set. The helm, we have medium armor with an invigorating trait. The medium armor is there to give us the one-piece benefit of using medium armor, so we can use the medium armor passives to play into our character's playstyle. We use the invigorating trait to give us the higher health magicka stamina recovery, so we can play off that ideal setting for our character tool where we can have magicka and stamina recovery depending. So really good there. On the enchant, we have a tri-stat enchant. The tri-stat enchant is going to give you the ability to hybridize in all three roles: tank, healer, damage dealer. Now moving on to the shoulders, we are using a sturdy shoulder with a max health enchant on the Grothar shoulders. The sturdy is going to allow us more block cost reduction, and it's going to give us max health. Having that higher health pool allows us to tank more effectively. Now moving on to the body, the chest. We are using a reinforced chest. This increases the item's armor value by 16%. Now this is better than using a Nirnhone body because heavy armor works best reinforced, especially when it's a larger than 2,000 value in resistance. So this works out better for you in the long run. The next piece is our belt, which is also sturdy, light armor, healthy, max health enchant. The sturdy again is to increase our block capabilities or reduce our block capabilities, but also increase our max health so we have that greater survivability as a tank. Now moving on to the gloves. Heavy armor, and it is sturdy as well with a max magicka enchant. This max magicka, when you add all the percentage values increases and everything, this one enchant gets to about 700 extra max magicka. So that's with the 26% increase in your max magicka pool. Or not 700, 500 and something. It's like 575 or something like that. But it's a lot. It gets you more resources, and with all the other enchants and everything, all that stuff gets boosted as well. So we use a max magicka enchant here. On the boots, we also use a stamina enchant, sturdy, heavy armor. This is to maximize, again, our stamina pool, but also give us that ability to have greater block cost. Moving on to the legs, we are using an invigorating legs heavy with a tri-stat enchant so we can hybridize, and we want that invigorating for those higher resource returns. Remember, even though it's only 22% or 22 between the head and the legs, that 22 grows based on the resources or increases you have to those resources elsewhere. Alright, moving on now to our jewelry. We are running 2 tri-runes. This allows us to hybridize better into the tank, healer, damage dealer. And then we have 1 weapon damage and 1 spell damage. This is so we can maximize our capability with both physical and spell damage with this build. Now moving on to the jewelry, the necklace, we have an infused necklace. This increases jewelry enchantment effectiveness by 60%. So we have a magic recovery enchant here. And as you can see, it gives us 270 magic recovery because it's the enhancements boosted by 60%. This gives us that greater magic recovery capability. Moving on to the shield now. We are using a sturdy shield, tri-stat glyph, so we can play more defensively with the blocking and not waste resources. And we use the tri-stat so we can hybridize better. Moving on to the weapon. This is where people are going to question things. I'm going to give you guys a straight answer for this. We are using a Nirnhone weapon with a flame damage enchant. The reason for the Nirnhone is it increases the damage of the weapon by 15%. So this weapon goes to 1535 weapon and spell damage. So this doesn't only affect our weapon damage capabilities, it also affects our abilities that do magic and spell damage. So we can actually take advantage of that. So our heals, some of our damage abilities can be affected by this. Now, onto the back bar. We are using a 2-handed greatsword with a weapon damage enchant infused. The infused increases the weapon enchantment by 30% and reduces the enchantment cooldown by 50%. This gives you weapon and spell damage equal to 452 because it's infused, and it lasts for 5 seconds. So you can use this on the back bar to become more aggressive with your enemies and dealing damage, but also using abilities to help aid your group because you get that 571 weapon and spell damage. This is why when we swap bars, our weapon and spell damage doesn't change by a huge margin. Alright, Now that you guys have seen the gear, traits, enchants, and all that, we're going to go take a look at the skills, starting with the class skills. Now, I take mostly Magicka-based skills for this character because they work a lot better utilizing a lot of Magicka capability plus stamina capabilities. So this way, when you're playing a damage dealer, you can use both Magicka and stamina base damage, and you can really amplify it because of the way this character works. Moving on to the Draconic Powers, we also use a lot of these in Magicka based. Earth and Heart as well, Magicka based, and we take specific ones to help aid our allies and to help us play the role we need to play when we're playing it. Like Obsidian Shard is really good when you're playing a support character or healer. You can throw this thing out, it does X amount of magic damage, stuns enemies for 3 seconds, and it heals you or an ally near you for 6,080 health. So it's really nice for that. We also use Cinder Storm. This puts down an AoE in front of you that covers 5 meters. It's got a 22 meter range, and it lasts for 18 seconds. Anything that walks into this circle, allies will be healed, enemies will have a reduced movement speed of 70%. So what I like to do is I like to do what's called a choke point pull. So I will pull enemies through like a doorway, and I will put the Cinder Storm down in the doorway. So when they get there, it's almost like they come to a standstill. They'll go, and then they start walking really slow through it. And it makes it harder for them to get to me and my group. So it gives me more time to taunt. Alright, moving on to weapon skills. And also with the classes' abilities, I always unlock all the passives because you never know what abilities you're going to use in what situation, whether you're a tank, a healer, or damage dealer. So always taking advantage of every passive is important. When it comes to weapon skills, we focus primarily on sword and shield on our front bar. So I unlock the sword and shield abilities that I feel best work for me on this character. I also unlocked specific, passives for the specific benefits they offer for when using sword and shield. Same thing with two-handed. I took the two-handed passives and abilities that fit best into my playstyle, but I took all the passive abilities because I wanted to benefit my character for the way they play. Now moving on to armor. We are a heavy armor build, but we still wear one piece of light armor. You are going to want to take the 3 passives here, especially if you're a Breton, because you can take high advantage of the reduced cost to all your abilities by 3%, with Evocation giving you an extra 2% reduced cost in Magicka, and with medium armor you're going to take the top 2 and the bottom 1. This is going to increase your weapon critical, and it's going to give you that reduced cost to your stamina abilities by 2%. So you actually get a 5% reduced cost to magic and stamina abilities for being in the Imperial on a Dragonknight. Saves you some resources. Athletics also really good for dodge rolling and sprinting stuff. And then heavy armor, you're going to want to get all the passives and the active ability. The active ability is primarily for when you're playing like PvP or something, so you can use a stamina resource and use magic resource more for damage. So you can focus that way. It works out really well. But we use the passives for this character because we wear 5 pieces of heavy armor. We will use all the passives. Moving on to world skills, soul magic. We do take the soul magic of ultimate, active ability, and passives. The main reason why we take these is so we can use them in different situations. I like to use Shatter Soul because it does a lot of damage up front or over time, over 2.5 seconds, and it explodes, dealing X amount of magic damage to enemies around the target you hit. It also keeps enemies from revealing them, or doesn't allow them to go to stealth, because they'll be revealed for 2 seconds after being hit by this, so they can't enter stealth or invisibility. And then I like using Consuming Trap because it gives me resources back whenever I activate this ability, and I fill a soul gem. So I use this a lot when I'm playing Overland. Now when it comes to guild skills, Fighters Guild, we do take all the Fighters Guild passives and active abilities. The reason why we take the active abilities is to use them in different situations. When I'm playing solo, I use Dawnbreaker of Smiting. When I'm playing in a group, I'll use something like Turn Undead, or I'll use Silver Shards for extra damage from an ability. So a lot of these I use for damage purposes, solo play, that kind of stuff, but I still use them. Same thing with Mages Guild. I use all the ultimate and active abilities, plus the passives depending on the situation, and also depending on what race I am. Because even though I'm a Imperial, if I put this Structured Entropy on my back bar, or on my front bar, I go to 37k max health. That gives me a greater health pool, but it also gives me 2% mag recovery and 2% max magicka, because of this passive down here. Now I can have this on both bars, which will help me out immensely. So, and it's also a nice heal over time. Now, moving on to the Sigil Order. Again, I unlock all the ultimate and all the active abilities that best suit my playstyle, like Min Spirit for when I'm playing a healer, Time Freeze for when I'm playing a healer to add some group support, Temporal Guard for when I'm playing want more damage mitigation in my ability to do that, and I also step backwards in time, doing this little trick that gives me resources back. It's really cool. Or I might use Deep Thoughts when I'm tanking. I might use Race Against Time to increase, to give me minor force for my magic damage abilities instead of using Rearming Trap. I also use Crushing Weapons sometimes to get another physical damage ability. And then I take advantage of the passives as well. Undaunted, I take all the active abilities and passives, because you never know. A lot of these can be used in group scenarios, so because they're all synergies, and they synergize differently. Like Inner Rage has a chance of becoming a synergy when you activate and taunt an enemy with it, and somebody can synergize off it. Same thing with Spike Bone Shield, Mystic Orbs, Tingling Webs, and Sanguine Altar. All these are synergies I can use, which means people can get their Undaunted command effective use, which is going to give them health, stamina, and magicka back. And then, of course, with having one of each piece of armor equipped, we can take advantage of Undaunted Metal. This increases health, stamina, and magic stat by 2% per type of armor worn. So heavy, light, and medium, they have to be equipped. So we have 6% because we are wearing 1 light, 1 medium, and 5 heavy. Alliance War. Assault skills. I take the skills that best reflect my ability to play this character. I primarily play PvE, so I take the skills that work best for PvE. If this was a PvP character, and have all the skills and passives unlocked. Same thing with the support line. I unlock what works best for me in PvE, and I unlock the rest if I need to play PvP. Assault, Racials, Imperials. I do unlock all the passives, of course. You're going to want to do this. But the primary thing that you're looking for here is Red Diamond. Reduce the cost of all your abilities by 3%. When you deal direct damage, you heal yourself for X amount and restore, or you heal yourself for 366 and restore 333 magic and stamina. That can happen every 5 seconds. That's why the Imperial works so good with this Dragonknight setup. Now moving on to crafting, alchemy, medicinal use. Also really good when using potions, resulting effects last 30% longer. And then provisioning, gourmand, and connoisseur. These do allow you to get 20 minutes longer on your food and drinks when you use them. So Dubious Cameron Throne, Witch Mother's Potent Brew, and Tri-Stat Food. That's the prime reason why you're using these. Now, I do want to mention a few things about races before I get into CP. If you're playing a Nord version of this, what you're going to do is you're not going to put... you're not going to grab the Lady Mundustone at all. You're just going to ignore that because of the rugged thing you have. Instead, you're going to use a different Mundustone. So you can use the Atronach, you can use the Thief, you can use the Lover, you can use whatever you want to fit your character build better. Now, if you're playing a Red Guard, I'm going to mention this, any more stamina-focused character, your magicka pool will be lower. Dark Elves, High Elves, Bretons, Argonians, and I forget the other one, play this a lot better than the stamina-based races besides the Imperial. So, the magicka races are better designed for this, while the stamina ones are better designed for knight characters. Magicka ones are better designed for paladin characters. Alright, but I did want to show that you can play any character. Now we're going to go over the skills on the bar, starting with the first skill. It is our Pierce Armor. This does physical damage, it taunts the enemies for 15 seconds, and it also applies Major Fracture and Major Breach, reducing spell and physical resist by 5,280 for 12 seconds. The taunt lasts for 15, and it's a really nice ability to get that higher penetration value for both your magicka and physical based damage abilities. Next, we have Deep Slash. This does a really nice thing. It hits 3 targets. So the first target you hit will take the biggest amount of damage. The 2 other targets are going to take a minor amount of damage. But all the enemies that you hit will have their movement speed reduced by 60% for 4 seconds. And also be affected, all affected enemies are hit with minor maim, reducing their damage done by 15% for 12 seconds. It's really nice. Next, we have Igneous Shield. This grants us, or our allies, a damage shield for 3,518. It also grants us a shield that absorbs 8,797. This portion scales off your max health, and then when you activate the shield, you gain minor or major bending, increasing your healing done by 25% for 3 seconds. We use this in conjunction with our Coagulated Blood, which is the next ability, which draws on the Draconic power to heal you for X amount, increased by up to 33% of your missing health, gain major fortitude, increasing your health recovery by 20% for 23 seconds. The reason we use this is because the heal from this is based off of your weapon and spell damage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and hit this guy real quick and show you that the heal went up because of my spell damage. So I actually heal for 6,000 and something. If I use this and then this, I get like a 9k heal. Sometimes I can even get as high as like a 25k heal depending on how much spell damage I have. So that's the reason why I use this. The next ability we have is a Absorb Magic ability. This is a defensive posture morph. But bolster your defenses, absorbing up to X amount of damage from your next spell projectile cast on you and healing you for 16% of your max health. While you have this ability equipped and this ability slotted, the amount of damage you can block is increased by 8% and the cost of blocking is reduced by 8%. The nice thing about this is because we're a Dragonknight, which a lot of people don't know this, Dragonknights have iron skin. They increase the amount of damage they can block by 10%. This is whether you're using a two-handed sword, dual wield, bow, resto staff, destruction staff, or sword and shield. So when using a sword and shield, you get 20% mitigation when blocking. It is actually the first passive here, Fortress. Or not Fortress, the Sword and Board. When your weapon damage is increased by 5% and the amount of damage you can block is can block 20%. So you actually block 30% as a Dragonknight. With this, you get 38% damage mitigation. This is why Dragonknights are one of the most played tanks in the game, is because they get this really great capability of mitigating damage with sword and shield. Now moving on to our ultimate. And this ultimate is a floater, so you can use other ones, but I prefer Standard of Might. The reason why, you call down this battle standard dealing X amount of flame damage to enemies every 1 second for 18 seconds, and then also applies Major Defile to them, reducing their healing received and their health recovery by 30%. Now this has an 8-meter radius around it, so anything standing within that thing is going to get that Major Defile. They're not going to be able to heal themselves as effectively. On top of that, you standing in the area, you increase your own damage done and reduce the damage taken by 15%. So it's a really nice way to give you survivability and everything. And then on top of that, it is a synergy. So an ally can near the standard can activate the Shackle synergy, dealing X amount of flame damage to all enemies in the area, mobilizing them for 5 seconds. Moving on to the back bar. To be a more effective tank, we need certain tools to make us capable. One of those tools is going to be Unrelenting Grip. This is going to allow you to throw a chain out to your enemy, grab them, and pull them back to you, dealing flame damage. Now it also grants you Major Expedition, increasing your movement speed by 30% for 4 seconds. And then if the target cannot be pulled, you restore 100% of the ability's cost. This attack cannot be dodged or reflected, so they have to take this, and then they're going to get pulled to you. The next thing that we have here is Brawler, and Brawler is a good one. You can also use Carve. Carve actually works a little better, but the reason I like Brawler is because, one, it does damage to multiple targets in front of you in a cone in the 7-meter radius around you, like, and then on top of that, you also gain a damage shield that absorbs X amount of damage For 6 seconds, each enemy hit increases the damage shield strength by 50%. Now I'm going to do something so I can show you this. I'm going to go ahead and do this, drink my stamina power pot, so I can show you what happens to this ability when my weapon damage is boosted. Now it goes to 4,190. So if I'm using something that gives me a weapon damage increase of any kind, that's how I'm going to be able to boost this shield strength and make it more effective. The next ability we have is called Burning Talons. Now a lot of people are going to say Choking Talons is better for a tank. I don't use Choking Talons, and here's why. I'm already applying Minor Maim to 3 targets with Deep Slash, so I don't really need more of it. What I need is something that can hold the enemies in place and kill them. So this will grab the enemies, doing flame damage to the enemies, and an additional amount of flame damage over 4 seconds. It also immobilizes them for 4 seconds, and an ally near the Talons can activate the Ignite synergy, dealing X amount of magic damage to all enemies held within them. It's a really great ability. Next ability we have is called Cinderstorm. Now this, you summon a scorching cloud of ash at the target location, reducing movement speed by 70%, and healing you and your allies for X amount for every 1 second. Now this, because of how it works, and the way you work, if you do your Igneous Shield, and then this, you can actually make a pretty powerful heal on the first one, and then get that heal over time. So this way you can get that greater healing going on to yourself. Now, because of the way Cinderstorm works, it lasts for 18 seconds. And it heals every second for 18 seconds. That is 18,000 health over 18 seconds. And if you can crit heal, it's even better. Now, the next ability we have is called Volatile Armor. Now, I love using this now that I know how it works. So this one gives you Major Ward and Major Resolve, increasing your physical resistance and spell resistance by 5,280 for 20 seconds. You release a spray of spikes around you, causing enemies hit to take X amount of magic damage over 10 seconds. While active, your armor returns X amount of magic damage to the enemy that uses direct damage attacks against you. So this is why we use this. And this can also be boosted by max spell damage. So the damage it returns, the amount of damage it does, can also be boosted by spell damage. So it's really important to know these things, because you can take high advantage of them in different situations. Now the last ability we have is our primary ultimate. It is Aggressive Warhorn. We're going to be using this primarily in trials to boost the N8 or groups. It increases their max magic and stamina by 10% for 30 seconds, and you also gain Major Force, increasing your critical damage by 15% for 9 seconds. So it's really, really good, especially when you're in a dungeon. So, or not in a dungeon, in a trial, because you're going to boost everyone's critical damage by 15%. Now that I've shown you guys the skills, the gear, the traits, Mundus Stone, all that kind of stuff, and gone over how you can build it, we're going to take a look at CP, and then we're going to take it into a dungeon. So starting with the red tree, we have 56 in Ironclad. This reduces damage taken from direct damage attacks by 20%. Moving on, we have 31 in Thick Skin, reducing your damage taken from damage over time effects by 13%. 43 into Hardy, reducing your damage taken from physical poison disease damage by 10%. And 43 into Elemental Defender, reducing your Flame, Frost, Shock, and Magic damage by 10%. Now moving on over here, we have 40 into Bastion, increasing the effectiveness of your damage shields by 16%. This applies to both your armor set shield and your Igneous Shield. Then we have Quick Recovery, 19 points, giving us 5% healing received. We have 38 into Heavy Armor Focus to get that 3250. This is how we get that more equalized resistance value. And then, moving on into the green tree, we have 40 into Warlord, reducing break free cost by 16%. 16 into Sprinter, reducing sprint cost by 10%. 16 into Bashing Focus, reducing bash cost by 10%. Remember, Sword and Shield also gets reduced bash cost and increased bash damage, so it's really nice. Then we have 75 in Arcanus, increasing your mag recovery by 14%. 43 into Tenacity, increasing mag and stamina. Your fully charged heavy attacks restore by 10%. This is primarily for stamina purposes, because our stamina recovery is really low. We're going to take advantage of that higher return from stamina. Moving on over here, we have 40 in a tumbling, reducing your dodge roll cost by 16%. 40 in a shadow ward, reducing your block cost by 16%. And then moving on over here, we have 43 in a blessed, increasing your healing done by 10%. 23 in Elfborn, increasing critical damage, critical healing of your magic abilities by 10%. And please remember this is a hybrid setup that we use here. 43 in Elemental Expert, increasing Flame Frost, Shock, and magic damage by 10%. Moving on over here, we have 35 in a Physical Weapon Expert. This increases light and heavy attacks with two-handed, one-handed sword and shield, dual-wield bow weapons, and werewolf form by 20%. We also have 40 in a Mastered Arms. Having this setup, we get Retaliation. When you block a heavy attack, your next light attack used within 7 seconds deals 30% more damage. And Reposit, whenever you block a melee attack, you have a 15% chance to deal X amount of physical damage back to the enemy, and it can happen every 5 seconds. And then Butcher increases your damage done with light and heavy attacks to enemies below 25% health by 5%. We have 43 in a Mighty. This increases physical poison disease damage done by 10%. 23 in a Precise Strikes, increasing critical damage and critical healing with stamina abilities by 10%. And 20 in a Thaumaturge, increasing your damage done with damage over time effects by 9%. And that's how we set up for more hybrid play. Now I'm going to take you into a dungeon to show you how effective this build can be. And we're not going to play through the whole thing. We're going to go up to the first boss encounter in Depths of Malatar. And we're probably going to let him kill us after so long of fighting him, so you guys can just see how effective this thing can be as a tank and how it plays as one. Excuse me. So Depths of Malatar dungeon itself was added with the Wrathstone DLC. It's a very challenging new group dungeon added to the game, but it's a lot of fun. So the other reason why I like this on the back bar is because when I use Brawler, it applies that higher weapon and spell damage for myself, and then I can go into using Burning Talons, and it also boosts the damage capability of it. So first things first, Potion, Volatile Armor. Alright, so now that they're dead, we're going to move on to the next room. And as you guys can see, this thing works out really, really well. We're just going to run into the group of them. We're going to drop our Cinderstorm, and then our Burning Talons, so it'll grab all of them. And then we can proc our Groth Dart. This way we can keep that higher damage output on those enemies. I'm going to go ahead and bring them over here, and we're going to drop the banner so you guys can see this. So the banner drops, and it gives me 15% damage reduction. So it's really nice. And then it increases my damage by 15% with all my damage, including my fire damage. Now we're going to go in here and tank the Big Ugly. So, of course, you guys know first thing first, this Brawler, drop our talents, do this. And the reason we do talents is because talents still does apply the damage effect. So the damage over time effect. But I'm going to go ahead and let him kill me. Like I said, I'm just going to stand here and die. But I wanted you guys to see how effective it can really be. And it is a very effective tank. In veteran mode, this thing is almost unkillable. So, it's pretty crazy. Alright, now we're going to Way Shrine, and we are going to go ahead and close out this video. So one of the things I want to apologize to first is there's a sound in the background you guys might hear. They've been doing a bunch of road work in my neighborhood the past few days, and I was hoping to be able to get this recording done before they got finished, but they also have been replacing power poles as well, and so our power was out. So now they're replacing the power pole in front of my house, and that's what that sound is them putting the power pole in so that we have a new one. But that's pretty much it for this video, guys. I hope you guys like the Vengeance Paladin. It's one of my more preferred Dragonknight builds I've ever came up with. And you guys gotta understand, I've always been a person who's disliked Dragonknight for a long time until I made this. And then I fell in love, and I really did fall in love. I thought this was the coolest thing out there. And it is a lot of fun. So, if you guys are interested in this build, you guys know what's coming next. Go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.